Thank you for staying with us. It's time now to take a look at stories making headlines on the front page of Nigerian newspapers. And I begin with the Leadership newspaper. The major story here says Niger crisis concerns as Wagner boss Prigozhin dies in plane crash. Concerns as Wagner boss Prigozhin dies in plane crash. All the details on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. To the Nation newspaper now. Emefiele opted for plea bargain in alleged 6.69 billion naira fraud case. Suspended CBN boss gets tough conditions. Siblings withdraw human rights suit. Details on the front page of the Nation newspaper. To the First News newspaper now, 6.9 billion naira fraud. Emefiele goes from for broke to escape jail, opts for plea bargain as arraignment stalls again. Details on the front page of the First News newspaper. And to the Salient Times. Salient Times, alleged 6.9 billion naira fraud. Emefiele, federal government may settle out of court. Alleged 6.9 billion naira fraud. Emefiele, federal government may settle out of court. His arraignment stalled as court fails to list case, court strikes out brothers' suits against the AGF and DSS. Details on the front page of the Salient Times. To the Daily Independent now, federal government doesn't know how to manage oil subsidy removal. Governor Obaseki of Edo State speaking there. Federal government doesn't know how to manage oil subsidy removal. The details on the front page of the Daily Independent. And on the front page of this day, Governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, still speaking, says, I am shocked, scared of federal government's lack of plan for Nigerians after ending subsidy. Obaseki, I am shocked, scared of federal government's lack of plan for Nigerians after ending subsidy. Says palliative, deceitful, promises support for Edo people. You find the details on the front page of this day newspaper. To the Daily Times, 3 days in office, scandal rocks at Minister Musawa. 3 days in office, scandal rocks at Minister, that's Hanatu Musawa there. And this has to do with her NYSC certificates. There are reports that she is still serving. And NYSC is saying that it is illegal and there are chances she might face a 2-year jail term. But if you want to know the details, just take the Daily Times and look through for all the details of that story. Ibrahim.
This is Nigeria. Wike gives 8-month deadline for completion of Abuja light rail project. Wike gives 8-month deadline for completion of Abuja light rail project. That's this Nigeria. Next is the Guardian newspaper. 24 years after, Nigeria's space program loses traction despite yearly allocations. 24 years after, Nigeria's space program loses traction despite yearly allocations. That's the Guardian newspaper. Next is Daily Trust. Reps FMBN draw battle line over multi-billion naira housing funds. Reps FMBN draw battle line over multi-billion naira housing funds. Nigerian News Direct. Local manufacturers earned over 55 billion naira from ban on importation of SIM cards. That's the NCC there. Local manufacturers earned over 55 billion naira from ban on importation of SIM cards. The Punch newspaper is next. States debt may hit 1.3 trillion naira over palliative loans. States debt may hit 1.34 trillion naira over palliative loans. That's the Punch newspaper. Nigerian Tribune. Financial experts won over $3 billion NNPCL loan. Financial experts won over $3 billion NNPCL loan. That's the Nigerian Tribune there. Business Day, the last but not the least. FX crunch threatens Nigerians' access to life-saving drugs. FX crunch threatens Nigerians' access to life-saving drugs. That's the Business Day newspaper. Veronica.
Ibrahim, let's quickly look at this matter of the housing scheme. So the Minister for Housing and Urban Development, Ahmed Dangiwa, came before the House of Reps Committee on Housing, and they were talking about this matter. Recall that for over 10 years now, there's been this housing scheme put in place where workers contribute, and they are said to benefit from it on the long run to be able to build houses and do one or two things at the end of the day. But a lot of persons have been finding it difficult to access these loans that they contributed their money. Very good. We have to mention that aspect. So the Federal Mortgage Bank, which was formerly headed by the current minister, he was the former managing director of the Federal Mortgage Bank. And the reps are saying, if you look at the papers, there's a battle line being drawn over the multi-billion naira housing funds. And so they were questioning him about the monies he has gotten over the years, that was accrued over the years with regards to contributions being made. And he was saying that he will get the full data and also get to address the matters of bureaucracy, hampering people from being able to access these loans, and also look into the housing deficit. There's a matter of housing deficit, how he was going to address it. And he said that though he is not satisfied with the figures being given or bandied around as being that what we have with regards to housing deficit, but that he was going to look into the issues. And then NLC came out to say, you know what, they were threatening that we are going to pull out of this housing scheme, National Housing Fund, contributory funds that workers have been putting in over the years and are unable to access. That there's so much challenge with Nigerians accessing these funds. And then it's also difficult for them to build anything they want to build, because at the end of the day, the essence was for them to be able to build.
Have a roof over their heads.
Some have some property that they can call their own, have a roof over their heads, like you rightly mentioned. But it is becoming a difficult challenge, as something has to be done. And it's one of the key things the minister has to look into as he assumes office.
Well, so many issues, in this country, and we believe that this current administration, which has hit the ground running, so to say, they are looking at, okay, how do we resolve most of these issues that are bedeviling the development of this country, and one of it is this we're talking about, the housing scheme. So it's good that we have the former managing director of the Federal Mortgage Bank, saying that we have a lot of money. I left a lot of money. So why is it that the data that we have for the housing scheme is not in tandem with the reality? So why should people, retirees for instance, who worked over the several years of their lives, dedicating their services to the development of this country, and they are not able at the end of the day call something that is their own property, having roof over their heads? And we know the cost of price of things, and we know the cost of living even in this country. Lagos, where we are, just a room, we know how much it goes for. So if you have your own house, you have your own property, you can live in peace. You'll be away from the fear that, oh, the year is running out, or my rent is running out. How do I pay for the rent? So I feel it's all about transparency, because if you look at the hierarchy of needs by Abraham Maslow,
yes,
the psychological needs, apart from food,
shelter
is very important.
It's critical.
It's very important, because if you don't have a roof over your head, you scatter your children here and there. And some who are not right under your nose, they might turn to anything. Now you see people who are living in shanties and all of that. So it's not okay that you work all your life and you're not able to have something to show.
And you contributed.
Because it's
contributed to this scheme. And the essence was for you to be able to access it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that bureaucracy has to be looked into.
Is it a matter of bureaucracy, or transparency? Because exactly why is it that
do you know
I
the process?
contributed over the
Do you
years?
know the process for you to access loans from this scheme that you are contributing? You need to hear people's stories about they trying to access funds that they contributed, you know, and you know it is spread over years for you to pay back or something. And it's not a good story. Some workers have also come out to say, you know what, I am pulling out. I recall my husband got a mail, I think last month, asking him if he wants to continue contributing to this scheme, this fund. And he said no, he pulled out. And I hear many people saying they are pulling out because they have tried to access it, but it's not happening. It's an ugly story, and we know what it is, the cost of rent is right now.
I think
we were just having this conversation this morning where someone was saying that their landlord has increased the house rent twice the amount. Now, how do these persons, how convenient is it going to be for them to pay these monies when they had hopes that, okay, we will be able to access these funds? Now they can't do that. There is a house rent before you. If they were able to access it, perhaps they would have had some structure in place that they could say, okay, decide, okay, we'll move into it now that our landlords are increasing house rents. Now we have something on the ground that we can easily move into. Even if it is not completed, we can manage it. We know how Nigerians are. Nigerians are not lazy. But the moment you compel them to say, okay, contribute this thing, trust us to give you something, to do something worthwhile that you can fall back on when perhaps you retire, like you mentioned, or you want to do something, have something, a property on the ground that you can easily access, and they are not accessing it. This is one of the things that make them not trust government.
I think we are also a subscriber. We are subscribers of this housing scheme.
Yes.
And you know, when we had this conversation, you know, with the organization, you know, a lot of promises and all of them looking forward to, okay, when we go as a group, we expect that something, you know, when you now hear some of these stories, it
bottlenecks.
It makes you feel like, okay, exactly what am I contributing for? Before we used to have Minister of Housing and Transportation, Minister of Housing Infrastructure, but now we know that
it's been
unbundled. The president has actually unbundled, separated housing from urban development and all of that. So hopefully they will have lots and lots of concentration on housing and the urban development, because it's part of it. So if there is need for them to collaborate with private developers, you know, how can they come together, do a lot of investment? At the end of the day, everyone will be able to, have access, one, to their funds and have access to houses over their roofs. So it's a whole lot of conversation that they need to.
And one thing I need to mention, housing and urban development.
Yeah, one thing I need to mention is that the committee, the House committee on this issue said that if we continue this conversation, if we continue this investigation, a lot of people will end in jail. And I think that's what should be. That's what should be. Get to the root of the matter, find out what went wrong, who is responsible for so and so. So if the person is found wanting, then they should be made to face the wrath of the law, so that will serve as deterrent for others.
You know how Nigerians are with their monies. Recall when the redesigning of the Naira, where the CBN says you could not withdraw your money, a certain amount, beyond a certain amount, and how Nigerians reacted. It's the same thing. Some persons do not necessarily want to work with developers and all because they don't trust them. That's the truth.
So they have to be government regulated.
Yes, government regulated, but how does this regulation work? People want to do these things themselves at their own pace and time. That's basically what it is. Let me access these funds. That is what you promised it would be. Just deliver on your promises. That's what it is. And I hope that this minister would address these issues, the bottlenecks, such that Nigerians who contribute these monies can access these funds and do something. These are ways. Recall the president, when the ministers were swearing an oath of allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he spoke about accountability, transparency. These are the issues. This minister should ensure transparency. Let's get to the root of the matter. we are holding him to account concerning this issue now. So let him do something so Nigerians can see that he is working and he can write his name in gold.
The issues
at the end of the day, he's addressing the issues. So we reduce the number of persons who are out there on the streets, sleeping on the streets. There's a number of persons who can no longer afford to pay their house rents because of the cost as it is. They have other things to pay for, school fees. We're talking about how it is that September is coming close. Some persons are already thinking about their children's school fees. And then you're also going to look at house rent. There's a lot that has to be looked into, and I hope that the minister will be able to address all the bottlenecks and challenges and ensure transparency.